Hi, my name is Sarah Lavita, and I'm a program officer with the climate change team at the Center for Science and Environment Studies. We're talking to you straight from Baku, Azerbaijan, where the first week of COP29 is almost come to an end. I'm joined by my colleague, Sanjay,
Sandeep. I belong to the climate change program.
and we have a special guest with us today. This is Rebecca, and you can, yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Thyssen. I work at Climate Action Network International as Global Advocate.
So we are just going to give you quick updates of what has happened so far on two key negotiation tracks. One on the new collective fortified goal on climate finance, which is the headline issue of this finance COP, and secondly on Article 6, which cover issues related to the carbon market. So I'll just do a quick recap of what has happened so far on GCC or the climate finance. The negotiations started with a bang with G77 in China, which is the largest group of developing countries in the negotiation room, rejecting the first draft framework for a text that was provided to them by the co-chairs of the NCPG ad hoc work program. And the two iterations of the text have come back so far. The new iterations do have much more options. They have many more options that developing countries wanted to see, but they also have options that the developed side wanted to see in the text as well. So while it's more comprehensive, it's still going to be a fight. As of yesterday, negotiations open for observers like us were actually suspended. The process moved into what are called in or informal closed room meetings between negotiators alone. And last we heard, they were discussing issues of accessibility and transparency and disenable. At least that was the plan. But the way we read it at CSE is that this is low-hanging fruit. These were issues that already had some kind of convergence between the developed and the developing countries. So the strategy seems to have been, let's get the easy stuff out of the way. But that leaves a lot of pressure for the second week in the way forward. So I'll ask Rebecca to come in on what we're going to see next likely and what would make this condition.
Yeah, thanks. And maybe just also to reflect back on what happened yesterday. Indeed, three topics were selected: to access, transparency, and enablers, being framed as more convergent, but we could really see that the convergence actually have limits because behind that you have all the political issues that needs to be agreed on and that's still very much up in the air. So it's about the quantum, how much, who is going to pay, so what we call the contributor base, who is going to receive the money, and what kind of structure, what kind of goals are we foreseeing. And so all those questions are kind of giant elephants in the room. So even if you try to talk, about specific access feature and New Zealand and India will maybe agree on those, you can't really go much forward because you know that actually everything is elastic. So that was very much the atmosphere yesterday in the room, because some observers could get in with some party budget. So we had intel. What's going to happen next? So you know that at the technical level, we have two co-facilitators, so it's Australia and South Africa. So they so I don't know, they provided so many inputs, so many texts. But now what's planned is the presidency has said that tomorrow by 10, the technical track needs to close. I don't think that's possible nor realistic, and actually maybe not wishable either, because we need to actually have to secure a good text to ensure that ministers have what they need to agree on something ambitious. So let's maybe give it a bit more time, a bit more technical discussion to have a basis for consent. So as soon as the technical track closes, minister is going to take over, and then we're going to have a new ministerial pair. So it's also interesting to analyze those dynamics. So it's going to be ETIS, who's a very skilled and experienced minister, Minister Fuad, and Minister Bowen from Australia. So those ministers haven't yet been engaged with the text, but they've been consulting heavily with all the parties. So they have kind of, a clear vision of who can where, what are the red lines, etc. But everything remains, again, very much opaque at this stage because parties keep their lines and their red lines very close to their chest. So I think we're going to see kind of a shift of discussion from, very technical details, arrangement to a much more high level conversation.
And do you want to just maybe very quickly give in one sentence what are the red lines for the G77 and China versus what are some of the red lines for the developed country representatives like EU and US, like very broadly?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think one of the key opposition clearly is about the contributor base. On the G77 side, it's clear that we need to respect Paris, we need to be aligned with the convention, so there's not the time now to create new obligation, new financial obligation on developing countries. On the other side, for the EU, particularly the US, There is nuance in their approaches, but they need to have a political signal that new contributors will come in. So that's one major piece. Maybe another red line that has been very heavily debated so far is the idea of the structure of the goal. Developing countries, again, are very aligned with the Paris Agreement. We have everything we need in the Paris Agreement to create this new goal, and it's about provision and mobilization of finance from developed countries to developing countries. So actually very simple and clear. That's what the Paris Agreement says in Article 9. Developed countries, for various reasons and narratives, are trying to extend that goal to what we call an outer layer, to include all types of sources of investment, private sector, philanthropies, to, of course, make the numbers look way bigger and finally talk about the trillions they want to see. However, in terms of responsibility, of transparency, of tracking, this doesn't really make sense. So we are really skeptical about that approach, but that's, of course, one of the biggest battles.
Okay. So we're going to look at quantum and contributor based hopefully in the second week. And now I'll just turn over and hand over to my colleague Nishant, who's going to give an update on Article 6.
Hello, everyone. So after the first day of the buzz around Article 6, it was said that, Article 6 is nearly under completion. Operationalization of the market is very near. But now that the dust has settled, we see that a lot of differences have emerged over crucial issues that are under discussion and are essentially being carried forward from last COP or the discussions that were held on. And so just to go back a little, what actually happened on the first day was for Article 6.4, that is a UN-led carbon market. That is a supervisory body that is meant to create rules for the market. It was asked to come up with certain recommendations for standards for the market to work. Among those standards, there were two critical standards, two important standards, one on methodology and the other on carbon removal activities, that the COP, the party negotiators had asked supervisory bodies to come up with and recommend the body. But this two standards were rejected last year by the COP and were sent back to the supervisory body to be revised. Now, what the supervisory body did was it did not just revise those standards, it also enforced them as standards. And it asked the COP to basically endorse this approach. And this is what the presidency proposed on the first day of COP, and this was adopted. Now, certainly, this was not liked by all countries. Some of the countries objected to this, saying that that's a bad precedent. Tuvalu was the one that highlighted this, and in the negotiation rules, the Coalition for Rainforest Nations said it has broken trust that we place on the supervisory body. So there is a lot of discontentment around this. But going forward, now there are certain other matters under discussion which I would like to give a brief on. So there is one of the elements is the authorization. Authorization is the process where countries decide what sort of carbon credits, what sort of emission reduction units would they like to send outside the country, and what would they like to keep for themselves, both in Article 6.2 markets and Article 6.4 markets. So under authorization, the scope of authorization is under dispute. Should the authorization be issued for all the processes separately, for instance, for the projects separately, for the ICMOs, for the carbon credits that are issued every time? Should there be an authorization for that, or should there be a consolidated authorization for all the processes? So this is a matter of weight within countries. Then there are issues around reporting of the issue of transparency, where countries are debating what level of information has to be provided to the UNFCCC by various parties that engage in carbon markets. So in this, some of the parties, like the European Union, want that there should be rigid rules around reporting mechanisms, and there should be a certain amount of transparency. Some of the developing countries are of the view that the reporting requirements should be flexible because it would put too much burden on them to handle, and certainly something that they are not equipped to do. One of the other issues is around registries. Registries are the databases that essentially would maintain projects and whereas the other parties want the registries to have only specific functions. African group of nations have highlighted their challenges in having their own registries, and this is something that they want the developed countries to help them with. So these are some of the broader issues that are being discussed at this moment. Yesterday, a draft text was out for negotiation on Article 6.2, which had 169 paragraphs and over 100 options to choose from. Parties certainly had issues with this document. They said we need time to discuss this. And then it was decided that the draft text on which the negotiations would take place would be revised, and this revision was done, and today they are out with another text, which is a lot more simpler. The discussions will follow on these issues in the next week also. So yes, it remains to be seen where we go from, where we go ahead on this. That's all on Article 6, and please follow us more for more live chat. We would bring more content from COP.